Hello, and welcome to this edition of People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Gerst. I've been hiring, firing, and mentoring executives, frontline employees, interns, and job seekers in companies around the world through a host of transitions, some difficult, but most very good. I work with people in Hong Kong, India, Australia, and across the United States. What sets them apart? A lot, but there's more they have in common. And one of those commonalities is transition is a part of life. This experience has given me a bird's eye view on a variety of trends, economies, industry disruptors, and transitions that are big and small. It also brought me into contact with the thought leaders and decision makers you need to meet, the people who can make the difference that matters to you right now. Imagine knowing exactly what to do next and how to know it's time to make your big change. The insight track you're going to access during our future episodes is better than a crystal ball. It's the exact information you need to take that next step. Whether you're a new grad applying for your first professional job, someone looking to transition your work experience into a promotion, launching your own company, or maybe even starting to plan your retirement, you're in transition, and this series is for you. We all know transition can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And it's even fun when you have VIP access to the future you want. Are you tired of the uncertainty of being passed up? We'll share with you the tools and skills that can take your dreams to the front of the line. So, if change is on your horizon, or maybe just the thought of change, you won't want to miss this discussion. It could be the exact edge you need to turn transition into an amazing opportunity.
Nick Dorsey, so glad to have you with us today. Thank you so much for sharing yourself, your time, and your experiences.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
Hey, Nick, for those who don't know you or your background as well as I do, why don't you tell us something about your life, your work, your journey?
Currently, I'm the regional facilities manager for a company called Carvana. I currently oversee 140 properties nationwide. My journey's been a fun one. I started off digging ditches and drilling holes as an apprentice plumber. Throughout the years, I've worked my way up to every level, got into the native casino industry, started off as a frontline worker, made my way up to project manager, chief engineer, all the way up to a director of facilities, gone on to manufacturing and ran multiple departments there, and now I'm a regional manager for Carvana, where I oversee all the mechanical maintenance for infrastructure development on all the buildings and mechanical systems.
All of those experiences are a picture in the collage of your life, and I'm sure that you've taken something away from each one of them.
Yes, it's just, you learn so much going that route. I take a lot of pride in being fortunate enough to start at the bottom and work all the way up to the top. So especially when my team members come to me and they're experiencing some issues in the field, there's a good chance that I've experienced those too. So I know where they're coming from and understand what they're saying and trying to accomplish. So it gives me a very good sense of what's going on and pride, because I knew I was there once and I was fortunate to make it all the way to the top.
Nick, let's say a friend just calls you up and tells you that they've lost their job because their company is going out of business because of the COVID crisis. What's the 2 or 3 or 4 things that you would tell that friend to do? The first thing.
The first thing I would connect them with some of my friends, especially on LinkedIn, because I have a lot of CEOs, a lot of recruiters, and a lot of just big business people who can help them out. And I would say start branding yourself and start to put yourself out there and find a very good resume writer. Have them write up your resume, because it's so competitive right now. You need to pass that ATS, and just try to mentor them if they need that, to point them to the right direction and the right people to talk to, because we all need that at some point in our careers. And it was done for me, and I very much appreciate it. So for me, that's giving back to what has been done to me in my past.
First, Nick, why don't you describe what ATS means? And then, if you could make 2 suggestions to help people make their resumes better that you've seen in your career, what would those two things be?
Well, the ATS, applicant tracking systems, which personally I do not care for, but when I have 300, 400, 500 people apply for one position, it's impossible to go through all the resumes. So for me, in my position, like I said, trying to find the right words to put in there, the keywords, and the system changes constantly. That even from the current job I'm in right now, I had somebody write my resume because I did not have the right keywords. And you as an HR person, Bob, understands there's just keywords that have to stick out in the ATS system. And if you've never been around them or understand them or understand the philosophy of it, you'll be lost with it because it doesn't make sense. They don't want repeat words. They want different words. It's a really hard system to fully understand and be able to get through to be the top, 3 or 4%, I think it's what it's looking for, or 10%, something like that.
Mm-hmm. So, Nick, you mentioned LinkedIn. How should a candidate use LinkedIn or other social media tools in their transition?
So when last September is when I really started big time on LinkedIn. And what I did was, the crazy thing about it was I watched a Gary Vaynerchuk video and said, just engage on people's posts. That's where you start. So I started doing it, and I engaged on somebody's post on a Friday night, Mr. Ira Bowman. And I went on there, I was engaging. I got a lot of people who were sending me requests and following me, and just, I learned how to brand myself in the way that I wanted to be noticed. I wasn't perfect. I'm very raw. I'm not a keyboard warrior. What you hear is what you get, and what you see is what you get with me. I don't change anywhere. And I wanted to put that out there and people to see that, because I've interviewed multiple people over the phone. They're one way, and then when you get them in person, they're totally different. And I didn't want that perception to come across as me. So I wanted to brand myself as that. I wanted to show the real me and just, let people know I'm not perfect. I do make mistakes, but this is who you get. And it was very successful. I got lucky and it worked. And I worked hard at it too. I put a lot of time into it, but it was well worth it at the end.
So you mentioned telephone interviews, and today, generally, one of the first things you do is a telephone screening. You don't go into the office or so forth. That's later on. If you were to coach someone to do a better job in their telephone interview, what would you tell them to do?
I would tell them, after every question, take a little deep breath and take your time. Don't rush your answer. It's okay to pause. It's okay to take a deep breath and have a bottle of water with you. And try just to be as calm as you can. I know it's easier said than done. I understand, especially, when I understand some people's livelihoods are on the line because, they have a family they have to support and a house payment they have to make. So they get nervous, and I get it. But I think the biggest thing is take a breath in between each question. And it's okay to pause a little bit. I mean, the person who's interviewing you has an open mind. They understand what you're doing. They understand that, you're a little bit nervous, and it's okay to take your time.
You've been in several industries. How did you do the research on the industry, the company, and the job? What techniques did you use?
It's very interesting you bring that up, because the casino field I got recruited into, and when I first got into it, I really didn't know much about it but slot machines and table games. But then going into maintenance, that was a whole different beast, and didn't realize how much was put into it. So I was fortunate on that. So there wasn't a lot of me looking at, because it wasn't even on my radar. And to be honest with you, the manufacturing job was kind of the same way. The COO of this company I used to work with, and then like 5 years later, he called me out of the blue and asked me if I would come help them rebuild a couple departments and kind of rebrand and build a better culture for what they were looking for, because they were kind of doing a start over with their company after 50 years. So I was just very fortunate. I got recruited in all my job fields, so I really didn't do a lot of research, and I wasn't really expecting to go into those job fields. So I think it was mainly off of, what I've done in the past, and people know my work ethic and everything. So I'm just very fortunate people noticed all that.
Certainly on LinkedIn, as you've described, you're a very effective networker. There are a lot of people who aren't comfortable in the networking world, either online or in person. And if you were to be coaching someone who is not comfortable at that, how would you help them? What's the 3 or 4 things you'd tell them to do?
That's a very good question, because at one point I was not very comfortable with it. So the biggest thing for me was to try to break out of my comfort zone and realize if it's uncomfortable, it's going to work, and that's what it did for me. My first couple of videos, I was so nervous and I was like sweating, and I worried about what other people thought. And I got past that, where I'm like, I can't worry about other people because there's going to be a lot of trolls and haters out there. I took the mindset, and what I tell a lot of people is find your group of people or find some mentors and talk with them and let them experience it with you, because they'll guide you in the right direction. Mine was talking to people. Mine was actually talking to my wife too, asking what she thought about things, and trying to really figure out how I wanted to do things in life and what direction I wanted to go and what did I really want to do. What was the purpose of it? And was the purpose going to create something that was going to make a legacy or create a better job or create a better life? I would say find some people to mentor with, put yourself out there. And, you got to break out of your comfort zone at sometimes, and just engage on there. You don't have to put posts or anything. Just engage with people. People eventually will come around and help you. There's a lot of people who want to help you out there. So, and they're willing to. A lot of them are free. Go figure, they are. So just, engage, and engage some more.
I watch your YouTube on trolls and haters. And do you want to summarize to our listeners what you say, what you're coaching in terms of what do you do with trolls and haters?
Well, trolls and haters, that was awesome, because that was my post today, and I did one about 6 months ago. It was my Throwback Thursday post. And what I tell people on trolls and haters, one, if you start getting them, you're doing good, because people are either jealous or they try to take you down because you're being successful. I tell people take it as a positive, but then, don't engage back with them, especially when you're on social media. I always tell them, just delete their comment and unfollow them or delete them from a connection. Is it really worth it? Is it really worth having that person? Is it really worth the negativity in your life and what you're trying to accomplish? It's not. It's one person, especially on LinkedIn, has 660 million. It's just, don't let that person bring you down, because we need to be positive. We don't need to be negative. And those people just don't like their lives and they're frustrated, so they're trying to take it out on other people. So don't fall into the trap.
There's a real trap in following that negative energy. It's kind of like, the newspaper world, right? What bleeds reads, but it can really pull you down. And so if you want to keep your energy high, ignore those, move on to the positive energies. You talked about the importance of mentors. Nick, what should you look for in an effective mentor for yourself?
First of all, my number one and top mentor in the world is my father. I'm very fortunate where I can have a family member who has that much of an impact on my life. War veteran, first responder for close to 30 years. I just have so much respect, and the respect he taught me growing up and work ethic was just, I couldn't ask for a better situation growing up. But work-wise, what I did with mentorship was, when I got into some of my higher positions, I would just sit in some of the executive meetings and everything and just watch how people reacted, how they talked, how they presented themselves. I would just start having conversations with the people who I wanted to kind of emulate, and kind of follow how they were, because I saw the respect that came back to them. I saw how people reacted, people weren't rolling their eyes at them or making weird gestures because somebody was speaking. I saw that they genuinely got the respect. So there's a couple of them that I've talked to, and they've been my mentors now, and I talk to them pretty much once a week to once a month, now. But it's been, about 7 or 8 years now, and these people are great. When I get into a bind, I go to them, and I've been fortunate to be able to be one for a couple people, and and they still reach out to me. And to me, it's one of the greatest accomplishments of being in a leadership position where you can mentor somebody and watch them succeed and changes their life. It's just, to me, that's more fulfilling than actually doing what my job title is or my job description. It's just helping people.
In your transitions that you've made between companies, I'm sure that a good cultural fit was important to you. How do you find out what that culture is of the company, and how do you make certain that it lines up with you and your values?
I've made some transition where I thought the culture fit was going to be good and it wasn't, and then I made some where the culture fit was just amazing. My company I'm currently at now, I reached out to people who worked here. I asked them. It's a big national company, so obviously there's a lot of reviews and a lot of videos, so you have to go through them to make sure you're hitting the right ones, because it just is what it is. Competitors don't like you. Getting through the haters and trolls like we just talked about. To me, it was reaching out to people who worked here, who were willing enough to have a conversation with me, like in a direct message on LinkedIn was most of them. And I just asked them how they felt, what was the benefit of the company, what they thought about it. One of my positions, I was actually brought in to help change the culture of the company. So that was different because there was really no culture there. So helping develop a culture and the direction they want to go was actually, it was a lot of fun, but it was frustrating at times too, because you're asking a bunch of people who've been there for 15 to 20 years to completely change. Human nature says that is not necessarily going to work that well for a while. So that was a lot of fun doing that. I actually really enjoyed that because when I left, there was a big difference, and some of the owners of the company thanked me for helping them out and do that because I was a part of that. So that was very fulfilling.
People are going to change jobs over their lifespan. Some say 8, 10, 12 times in their lifespan. How can an individual set themselves up or prepare themselves for the transition that they're going to experience?
Preparing yourself is sometimes a difficult challenge depending on what you're changing to. For me, I've gone into different fields multiple times. So for me, the transition it's scary going into something you don't know. But at the same time, for me, it was fun because I knew I was going to learn a whole different aspect of things and a different field. And all it was going to do was going to bolster my resume, just make me better at a leader because I like that philosophy, know a little about a lot. So if I know a little about a lot of things, it makes me more valuable down the road. It makes me more valuable for a work position, for internal promotions. It makes me more valuable for maybe helping somebody out. Some of those transitions are tough for people, and I realize it, and I think just researching a lot of what you're going to be doing and trying to understand that new role, it would be huge, and just reading books and watching videos. And like I said, this whole world's run off of Google and YouTube now. So there's a video or article out there about everything.
Nick, I've heard the line before that careers and probably life in general is curly, not straight line, always going up. What does that mean?
With careers, there's always going to be bumps in the road. It's never going to be smooth, or very seldom it's very smooth. I just think, for me, I went from a plumber to a casino to manufacturing to we're an IT company. That wasn't all smooth. There was a lot of bumps in the roads and going different directions. And especially now with COVID, a lot of people being laid off, they're going into different job fields. So it's not smooth.
Nick, how do you deal with the stress of being unemployed and looking for a job? What's your coaching to friends that are experiencing that?
The hardest thing in the world, and I think you would agree with this, the biggest thing you got to do is be patient, but that's the hardest thing at the same time. Yes, I was unemployed once for about a year and a half, and just trying to do side jobs with people and just trying to find the right fit. Even though I was bringing in money, I was stressed because the money wasn't consistent. I knew it wasn't always going to be there. And the hardest thing I try to tell people is just be patient. I know it's hard, but I do have some religious beliefs and everything, and I do believe everything happens for a reason, and you're being guided down the path you're supposed to go. I know a handful of people don't believe that, but I try to tell people it's happening for a reason, and when it's all said and done, you'll know what that reason is. But it's hard to convince people that at the moment not to stress out and everything's going to be okay when there's a lot of uncertainty there. So I just try to be patient with them. I try to coach them. I try to set them up with the right people to hopefully can help them find the position they're looking for.
Nick, do you think that transition between jobs is somehow different if you're older, if you're a minority, if you're a woman, if you're a fill in the blank? Is it different?
I don't want to believe it is, but it'd be very unrealistic for me to say that it isn't. It is, especially now, me getting older, and transitioning over to a younger generation's field. Learning a whole different way of doing things. Sometimes it can be a difficult transition. I do feel there's bias. I do feel it's tough for certain people and certain age. I was reading some article talking about if you're in your 40s or over, a lot of people don't want to hire you now. And I'm like, whoa, that's like, kind of hits home because I'm in my 40s. So I'm like, whoa, I don't understand where that came up, but it's very unfortunate we have to deal with that stuff.
What if you have a friend that has come to you for advice and that friend has something bad in their past work history, discipline, maybe even fired? How would you coach that person to deal with that bad point in their history?
We have to make them believe that, there are points in our life, all of us, I don't care who we are, we've done something either bad or stupid or dumb in our past. We have to find a way, not necessarily make up for it, but prove that that's not who we are. And I've told some people in the past, because I've had some employees, team members that have had some stuff and they couldn't get promotions. And I told them, I go, listen, volunteer to do stuff. Go do stuff outside of work that makes you look good, that makes it look like you want to help the community, that kind of puts you in a better light, put away what happened maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago. For me, I'm open-minded to give people a second opportunity, but I understand sometimes from big companies why they don't. And it's too bad because some of those people with a second chance a couple of them were some of my best team members I've ever had. I feel bad, but like I said, prove, work hard, volunteer, and just show that you do have remorse for something bad that happened and prove that it's not going to happen again.
You've given a lot of good suggestions about things that work, that are positive in a transition. What are some of the things that you've seen that is not as effective in helping someone get through their transition?
Oh, some of the things is just when individuals are going to a new company and the new company leadership accepts them, but other people don't accept them because they see them and they automatically judge them, or they automatically put them in a corner, or they just automatically assume something without knowing somebody. But that kind of goes both ways, because some of that I've seen some people come in just qualified as could be, great resume, great interview. Then they come in like they own the place and just drop the hammer from day one. And that doesn't help their transition either. I feel it's unfair when people come in and you automatically judge them before you even know them, and you automatically assume this is the way it's going to be. It's happened to me when I got promoted. I went from a frontline employee up to a project manager. And I remember the frontline employees I worked with every day, right when they knew I got promoted, the first thing out of their mouths was they weren't like my friend anymore. And they're like, oh, you're one of them now. It was just an automatic, they were done with me. And I was like, okay. So after a couple of months, they started realizing I'm still one of them. I just was in a different position. But I see a lot of time when people come into a company and they automatically get, judged. And it's just, to me, it's not the way to do it. I mean, we got to be open-minded and respect everybody till they give you a reason not to respect them.
So you talked about the need to be patient while you're going through the transition. You need to have something, though, that keeps you grounded during that time. What do you suggest people use to help them in the dead of the night when those gremlins come out and tell you that, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're too fat, you're too whatever? You need to keep something that keeps you grounded. What do you suggest people use?
Read books is a good thing. Me, I have a very small trust circle of people. I rely on them, my wife, my family. I have a couple mentors that fit into that too. And I think you just finding the right people and circling around you professionally and personally. I think it's very important to have professional and personal separated from each other on that type of thing. Professional wise, they'll understand the work environment more than your family will, because your family is going to make it more personal. And I think relying on people, relying on the ones really close to you, the ones you truly love, is the key to it. But then reading some really good books, I think, helps out tremendously also.
Do you have any books or other resources that you would recommend to someone that's going through a transition?
Right now, actually, this is ironic. This week, a good friend of mine, Curtis Tompkins, actually put out a Resume Writing Simplified, and it helps you beat the ATS system. And he published a book this week. So I found that's going to be very good for job seekers to understand the system of the ATS and everything. And another one I do, depending on the positions you're in, but if you have motivations to get into a leadership position, Simon Sinek wrote a book, Leaders Eat Last. It's a great book that just, explains, how to put your team first, how to put them before you, be like a servant leader. And those are two books I just highly recommend for people to look at. And then one by Zach Friedman is called The Lemonade Life. It's a really good book to read. I mean, and these are all simple reading books, but they're very effective books.
Nick, is there anything that I have not asked you that you think I should ask you that would help our listeners understand how to make a transition not as negative and maybe even a positive experience?
I think you hit a lot of the key ones. I think just for me, I've been fortunate, but make the transition fun. That's all you can do. Like I tell people, I go, listen, we have to work for a living if we want to enjoy the things we have. We need to. So let's just make this as fun as we can. I mean, sometimes there are days that aren't fun. I understand and I get it. But try to enjoy the people around you. Try to enjoy what you do. It may not be what you want to do for life, but at that moment, just try to enjoy it and enjoy the people around you, because at some point it's going to make you better. I've had a job I've really disliked, but guess what? It made me better because there's certain aspects of it I had to do that taught me a lot of things. But, I just try to make the best of everything you can when you're in a transition, because that's really all you can do. I mean, if you make it all negative, you're going to make it a horrible experience for yourself.
Nick, if our listeners only remember 3 things as they go through transition, what are those 3 things that you want them to take with them based on today's episode?
Patience. Be excited on a transition. It's something new. So find excitement in it and find a way to make it positive. I think excitement, being positive are just 2 huge things that will determine how you're going to successfully make it through that transition. If you go in closed-minded, you're going to struggle. So keep your mind open, make it through, people, and just there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to get there. You got to figure out how to get there without putting negative thoughts through your mind.
Nick Dorsey, thank you. Thank you so much for your thoughts, for your encouragement, for your being real and not filled with yourself, for caring and sharing. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And it was an honor to be on your show, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We're working in unprecedented times as the world responds to the recent COVID-19 crisis. The fact is that even those who are not in transition understand it could be right around the corner, next month or a year from now. The purpose of these episodes are to give listeners support and the critical tools to adjust with the winds, wherever they come. I'll continue to introduce you to guests who have successfully, perhaps gracefully or without too many battle scars, survived their own obstacle courses, and can share useful information on how to steady your ship or your world in this uncertainty. If today's message was helpful to you, please share it on social media. If you have any questions or podcast ideas for future conversations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I appreciate your time you're investing in sharing these important conversations with me, my guests, and others who are going through life transition. Transitions between jobs, life stages, new entrepreneurial ventures, or whatever life brings. Change is constant. The more prepared you are for it, the better and easier the change will occur. Thank you again. This is your host, Bob Gerst. See you at our next episode of People in Transition.